Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining this very interesting panel with leaders from higher education around the world to discuss the importance of SDGs, importance of global goals and sustainable development, but more importantly, the role of universities in that process. We'll start in a couple of minutes. We're letting attendees log into the panel, and before that, I will also pass to my colleague Drew Cartwright to open up with some important housekeeping announcements.
Okay, thank you, Arturo. There's a little bit of a lag on the slides, so I'll just go ahead with the opening notes here. Wanted to let everyone know that you have the ability to chat with everyone, so please put your thoughts in the chat. If you have questions for the panelists, if you will please put them in the Q&A. There we go. A very long lag. So that'll be easier to keep those separate, so we appreciate it. Also, this session is being recorded, just as an FYI for everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Also wanted to quickly say thank you to the UGC Conference Committee and all of the individuals that you see on the screen who helped bring this session and several others throughout the week together. So we very much appreciate these folks. All right, and just one more. Letting you know that we have a few sessions remaining for the week. We have 2 more sessions today at 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern time on climate action and on zero hunger. And then we have 2 sessions tomorrow starting at 9 a.m. Eastern. So I will turn it back to Arturo. Thanks for your attention on those quick notes.
Thank you, Drew, and thank you everyone again for joining. We have an extraordinary panel, and I want to start by thanking my co-organizer of this session, Gbemi Disu, who leads the Carnegie Mellon operation in Africa, in Kigali, Rwanda. I have 3 colleagues with me, 2 of them good friends, and one of them a new good friend, from different parts of the world with different perspectives. All of them committed, and all of us committed to this initiative, to the University Global Coalition, as an initiative to bring universities behind global goals as expressed in the Sustainable Development Goals for 2030. We believe, obviously, that's why we're here, of the importance of bringing universities to the work the world needs to do, humanity needs to do, to reach these goals. Again, that are basically an expression of what humanity needs at this point in history. So I will open up. Let me, you have the names on the screen. I'm going clockwise here. We have David Garza. David is the president of the Tec de Monterrey, clearly a leading institution in all of Latin America and the world, and one that has been very innovative over the years. One, of course, I admire a lot, but I think the world sees it that way as well. Suzanne Fortier is the just recently former principal of McGill University, chancellor and principal of McGill University in Canada, another extraordinary university, and she herself recognized as a wonderful higher ed leader. We've been colleagues in several initiatives, and she was one who started UGC with this small group of universities. So we'll have wonderful perspective with one initial step away from the position, and we have Zeynep Gürhan Canlı from Koç University in Turkey, who is the acting president of the university right now for the past few months and for the next few months as well. President, for now, and a different region of the world, also obviously important challenges in the intersection of East-West and many cultural divides in that part of the world, and all of us seeing different realities, but of course the global challenges that we share. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Drew, for all the organizing, and Sam and Primus. So let me open with the open question to the 3 of you, and of course I will put in my 2 cents here and there, but the 3 of you and the 3 universities you lead, have been very involved in UGC, University Global Coalition, again, as this kind of initiative. Why? Why do you think at the moment this is important? This is why did you in your universities first, took SDGs as an important north or as an important goal for the university work, and then why the initiative? Why doing it collectively and globally? Let me start with you, Zeynep, as coming from the further in the world. Yes.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here, and I'm delighted to share the stage with all these esteemed colleagues. And I'm the new friend, and basically, I'm delighted that I'm part of this panel as being an acting president of my university. Just a very brief information about the university. It's a foundation university. There are state universities and foundation universities in Turkey. We're a foundation university, and we are supported generously by Vehbi Koç Foundation, which has been active in the areas education, healthcare, and culture. And university, by its mission, by its birth, is committed to global goals in the sense that the existence of it itself is actually a contribution to the development, social development, economic development in Turkey and in the region and in the world, because it's a research university, and it actually not only does the research to obviously contribute to the scientific development, but also the social development as well. So for us, it was a great initiative when we first learned about the Global Coalition, and it fits very well. It fits very well with our mission. So we're very excited to be part of it. And I guess you're giving us a few minutes, right, to answer that question. So I don't want to take too much time.
Oh, yes, please.
Because SDGs is so much important, not only for our generation, but in fact, it's probably more important for future generations and young people. We see the importance of that. We see the importance of, as you said, we're in the middle of East and West. We have some challenges related with the global goals. We have our own challenges. All of them, in fact, require creative thinking and strategically thinking about partners. The problems are so big, so humongous that we cannot address them at all. Even though we're the leading research university in Turkey, we won't be able to address many things by ourselves. So we're actively seeking strong partners, and we're part of many other networks in different areas. But for SDGs, University Global Coalition seemed to be a very good sort of network for us, because it covers all of the globe. Even the session actually attests to that. It has many partners from around the world, and its focus on students, young people, is also an excellent part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Zeynep. And I'll go back to how coaches, how are you organizing to do that? Suzanne, you again, founding member of UGC, and McGill, another, big university for Canada and the world. Why the importance of SDGs? Why the importance of getting together with other universities?
Thank you, and it's good to be back. Some of you may know that McGill turned 200-year-old last year. So when you have such an anniversary, what do? Well, you think about the future. And frankly, when you look at the SDGs, these are the guideposts for the future. If we are to build a better future, these are the things we need to accomplish. And I remember my first meeting with many of you here, certainly with David and Arturo in New York City. Hannah Cabrera brought me to that meeting, and the sense you have there is that these are the right things to do. But it is daunting. It is big, and 17 is huge. I mean, most of us cannot even remember all 17 of them and list them. But I remember at that first meeting, when you hear people from each of the 17 rooms talk about their own area, the sense you have is you cannot prioritize. You've got to do them all. They're interconnected, and it is a huge, huge job. And so if with a big job, we need to get in, we need to participate. And I think that was a very clear sense for me that this was something important for McGill as it looked at the future. I was fortunate though, because the students and the professors at McGill, but particularly the students, were already so engaged and so concerned about these issues and showing their own leadership. They started a whole lot of initiatives over 12 years ago, in fact, putting their own money to create sustainability projects on campus. Many, many initiatives were launched by the students. So I knew my community was behind that. And just as a point of information, as we celebrated our bicentennial, for the students, the main event was a challenge around the SDGs, projects of the SDGs, and lots of participation from many, many students and people who were there to mentor them, to help them, to support them. So it was really good. So, you know, it's important for our students. And I think as leaders of university, this is the first thing we need to do, is respond to what is important to this generation of young people. And they're going to be the leaders. So what are we going to do to help them be prepared to lead? They're already leading, but to even be leading at a higher level. And this is very much a part of what I think this is about. And that's why I joined very enthusiastically, because I knew it was the right thing to do for the world, but also for my own community.
Great to hear that alignment. It's I think we're finding that more and more. Thank you so much, Suzanne. David, or maybe David, as they will call you, more international. But David, Tech, also a founding member of the initiative, and a strong supporter of everything. What has been the motivation for Tech, and how do you see it with a Latin American lens?
Sure. Yes, thank you, Arturo, and first of all, thanks to everyone that is watching this session, and of course, a privilege for me to share this session with Zeynep, Suzanne, and you, Arturo, as well. Let me start with a sort of story and confession related to your question, and bear with me about this. About 5 years ago, there was this important national meeting, and in that meeting, they contacted me and they said, "We've been following what you've been doing related to SDGs, and we would like you to participate in a panel in this session with these other people." So I accepted the participation in the panel, but as soon as I sent that mail, I turned inside and said, "What's SDGs and what are we doing related to SDGs?" So then I started to get to know more about especially about what we as a university were already doing as SDGs, related to SDGs. And I found that, yes, there was already a sort of movement that was coming, as Suzanne mentioned, from the students, from faculty, that perhaps we didn't have it framed with the umbrella associated with SDGs, and we didn't have the structure and the follow-up, perhaps, and perhaps we'll talk about that later. So, but that somehow also got me more interested and say, wow, this agenda is really interesting because it tackles those important problems. I mean, before the panel, we were talking about the current situation that we have in Mexico, Latin America, and challenges like poverty, hunger, climate change, equity, and so on. Well, those are very, very important problems that have been there, and that the solution, it doesn't depend on one single sector, but it's rather a multi-sectorial solution. So that's when I personally, and in my position, got more interested in this. And then it came that about in year 2019, also talking with peers, I found that many of my peers were already working on having some internal agenda related to SDGs or projects associated with SDGs. A partnership with the National University of Mexico started about year 2019, and then there was this invitation from Angel Cabrera to have this meeting that Suzanne referred to, and these exercises, the 17 rooms exercises, where we reflected about what we were doing, and we brought those type of methodologies inside of the university to see, well, it seems that we already have some work in progress related to the SDGs, but let's apply this methodology to try to identify what are some specifics that we can do. And then even we've found out that also in 2019, we were invited by the government of Mexico to participate as one of the institutions, not just from university institutions, but from different sectors, to participate in a high-level meeting related to the agenda that we should have. So it's something that is important. It's something that is really important for the world. It's something that is really important for the region, for the country. It's important for the individuals, for every single person. Universities are key to the promotion, implementation, and advancement of SDGs. And we have the responsibility to prepare students for current and future challenges and provide them with the necessary tools to have a positive impact on the world. We also, in our role that we have as universities, we are conveners and catalysts that can help achieve these goals through teaching, through research. I mean, the missions of the university: teaching, research, outreach, impact. So it seems that this is an agenda that fits very, very well. I will finish mentioning that during the pandemic, that story that I mentioned was when I was provost, but during the pandemic, I started as president of Monterrey. And during the pandemic, we work on defining our strategic plan for the next 5 years. Of course, it was very tough time, I mean, living with the pandemic. But we decided that it was important that even in this uncertainty, even in this situation that we had, it was important to try to see, well, even though we have a vision for 10 years, what exactly we want to do in the next 5 years, given that there is this context that we are living in the pandemic. And as part of that plan, in our strategic plan, it turns out that one of the projects that was identified as important was related specifically to sustainable development. So I think that this is something that really helps us as an institution. It helps us as a society, and definitely it helps and it motivates a lot to our students and our faculty.
Thank you, David. And it's nice to see take a look at the chat. You know, there's some comments about tech that I think you will like and enjoy. Let me share a little bit about Earth University for our attendees. We are based in Costa Rica. We are a very small but very international university focused on food systems. And we have students from over 40 countries: Latin America, the Caribbean, and Africa. That's has been our focus so far. As Zeynep shared, we were founded to promote development. So it's a natural spot to be. It's the right thing to do, as Suzanne put it. Older universities and you know, were maybe more thought of as preparing professionals, but I think we've all evolved or into thinking what we're preparing is leaders. As Suzanne said, as David said, you know, these are the young people that will take over, that will take charge of leadership positions in the private sector, in the public sector, in civil society, and they will face, they are facing already, right, enormous challenges. And I take and I share the sense that this is daunting, this is big, it's global, and it's multi-sector, so it makes it harder, right? There's no single quick fix. I think technology will help to many things, but there won't be an app that will solve the world's problems. We need to change, and that's the hardest part of all for us humans. And so And I love how well, clearly we're here because we share that perspective, but how we all share this vision that universities can be key to prepare the leaders and to convince them. I think with the 17 rooms that both Suzanne and David made reference to, which is something I would recommend you look into. It's a really interesting methodology on being practical and organizing within an university, an exercise of coming together around the 17 goals and learning what we're doing and thinking of what can we do. So I feel excited with the beginning of this conversation, but we have more. One thing for those of us joining, either from positions of leadership or from positions of in the faculty or with our students, how do we tackle this? So internally, so we decide that this is something we want to do. It is the right thing to do. It is that kind of moral spark, if you will, right? What Suzanne described. You look at it and say, this is what we need to do. It's daunting. As President Kennedy in the 60s said, we have to do it not because it's easy, but because it's hard, actually. And that's why we universities should get involved. How are you organizing to do that? How are you tackling that internally? And Tech is an enormous university. McGill, big university, coach, actually also close to 10,000 students. How are you organizing internally to put your resources towards reaching the SDGs and further, obviously, for humanity? Let's keep the order. Zeynep, would you start?
Thank you. Sure. As I mentioned, we are a research university, so everything somehow has to be tied with research. Then it actually takes off much faster, particularly among faculty. To that extent, we don't have one center or one sort of organization that guides, but it's scattered across the university. And there are a few key research centers in our university that focuses on SDGs. One of them is Koç University Social Impact Forum. And this forum has been established many years ago, in fact, to focus on social impact issues, to do research, not only to do research, but also to sort of foster basically development by providing training, by providing examples, by teaching, as well as by developing the ecosystem in Turkey. So to that extent, KUSİF, Koç University Social Impact Forum, has actually participated in last year's gathering as well in the global coalition, has been sort of one of the leading research units, research centers in our university. The teaching, for example, social entrepreneurship, social impact courses are designed and delivered and taught by that unit in coordination with, obviously, academic units. These require interdisciplinary focus. So it's you cannot single out one sort of faculty member or one sort of group to point that out. So it's a collaborative effort. To that extent, such an research center helps in that, because it's not only one discipline, so to speak, in our traditional university sense. So another research center is the Migration Research Center. It's been one of the first research centers in our university, and migration is clearly a challenge in our region and in the world, in many places now. And their emphasis on both research as well as training and practical, actually, sort of helpful organizing events in the region has been quite helpful. Another one is our gender studies center, which has been an extremely useful and extremely active. Center for Gender Studies also holds a UNESCO chair for sustainable development. To that extent, these issues are as Suzanne also said, interlinked. You cannot focus only on one of the SDGs, and also many of them are related. So these, for example, these three research centers have been sort of our on the forefront of these agenda, but it's been scattered. For example, Emine, who has been in your organizing committee too, we work closely. We're teaching, for example, she is teaching now the corporate responsibility course in the, for example, College of Administrative Sciences and Economics. So in each faculty, in each college, there are a few faculty members who would like to focus on this and who actually sort of lead the effort, so to speak, in that regard. And we also, on the more administrative side, we have sustainable campus operations. So that's not the research part, but more of our sort of to make sure our campus is up to standards as well. So that's how we're, I don't know if, I mean, it's not an organization, but it's a sort of a loosely related collective effort. All of these efforts are obviously are conducted in coordination with the president's office and other academic units.
Thank you so much, Zeynep. I think bells are ringing for all of us. Suzanne, what was McGill's experience, and where do you think it's heading now?
Yeah, so I think that our experience has been to introduce sustainability in everything we do. So of course, the three main areas of our mission: teaching, research, and outreach, but also in our governance and our operations. So it's really, in everything we do, it has to be top of mind. Even in our procurement policy, we've introduced sustainability. So that gives you a sense. Now, while people will have usually a general or broad introduction to SDGs, what you see, and it says, and it did also present, is that to really go deeper, it will tend to be in specific areas. So, of course, environmental sustainability is a big one, but also global and population health is a big one in our university. So in a business sustainability, looking at the legal aspects. So it's spreading everywhere in the university and getting the depth that it needs in all of those various areas. And when we did a survey, how much sustainability is being part of teaching and research, it's about 80% of our people in our university that one way or the other will have sustainability as part of what they do. Another one I should mention probably is the School of Public Policy, because a big role for the governments to promote sustainability. So what I would say is that it is increasingly part of the curriculum, and the curricula in every unit, but it also, I think, is important to promote sustainability in all of its various ways outside of the formal curriculum, students-led initiative, faculty-led initiatives. I think that is also something that we do. As I say, it started quite a long time ago. I'm thinking of one of the events we have every year now for almost 10 years is an outreach to the population on sustainability. So it's really part of the thinking. This year, which is maybe not such a big thing, but for us it was big, is that we have a new course that is being taught, which can be a credit for any program that you're taking. And it is on sustainability, so that every student can have an introduction to that very important topic, and it will be counted as credit. I mean, sometimes we forget that it's important for students to get the credit they need to graduate. We've had a sustainability committee on our board because I wanted the board to keep us here, put our feet to the fire. So you're talking about sustainability, what does it mean? And so it is part of the Board of Governors of McGill. We have the committee and we report on it all, regularly. The committee meets regularly, and also in our operations. Very important. And you know, that's the part where you say, put your money where your mouth is, because on the operations side, it means for us, for example, getting new forms of energy, electric based, that are more sustainable and it costs money. It is in the kind of buildings that we have and what we do. And I mentioned already in procurement. Everything that you do, you have to think of a principle, which is the one of sustainability, to add to our thinking, our planning, and our action. So that's how we're organizing ourselves.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. Important thing going to the board, right? And we'll go back to that. I think, David, what has been Tech's experience and and history?
Yes, well, definitely, as my colleagues have shared, this has to do not just with a single unit, but it has to do with the schools, with the research activity that they do, with the teaching activity that they do. It has to do with our own operations. It has to do also with the partnerships and the relationships that we have or that we pursue. So something that we did is that we realized that there were many things going on, and that was very good. But those many things, one thing is that we didn't have the visibility of what was being done, and we thought that perhaps there were synergies that we were missing the opportunity to have and have even more impact if we had that visibility, and if we have some sort of a mechanism where they can get to know each other, and there can be some sort of a follow-up role. And also the other aspect related to impact. I would say that many of the initiatives that we have and that we currently still have been initiated related to the greater topic or the greater theme associated with the SDG. But perhaps one of the challenges that we have, it has to do but how do we actually make sure that we are advancing, that we are moving forward, and that we are, as we mentioned, moving the needle in some aspect in our own context and in a broader context. So we decided to create in 2020, when I started as president, one of the first units that I created was the Vice Presidency for Inclusion, Social Impact, and Sustainability. This unit had the mandate not to be the owner of everything, but rather to help us to give visibility to what we were doing and promote synergies, and help us to try to define how we can actually move forward related to that impact. So this vice presidency, there is a Center for Recognition for Human Dignity. There is a group related that is focused on social impact, community service, volunteering programs, and there is the Office of Sustainable Development and Engagement. And so they interact with the schools, for example. And so one simple question: we didn't know how present was this in our curriculum, and they helped to say, well, to give the visibility. Well, it turns out that there is about 20% of our courses that have that every semester taught something related to one of the SDGs. But then it didn't end there. But now the question is, but how do we want this to be? How we can have even more impact? So that just to be an example. But let me share with you that I would say that one important contribution has been to publish an internal report that we call it the Sustainable Development Initiatives Report, where we group together everything and we classify it. And now we are also talking about the impact. It turned out that Tec de Monterrey, we're a university with a multi-campus university with over 25 campuses in Mexico, with over 90,000 students. And it turns out that we have 800 different projects or initiatives related to SDGs. And some of these initiatives are impacting, we try to take track of the impact, and they were somehow getting a direct impact of more than 500,000 people. Just to talk about people, but then you have the impact also related to the environment and the other aspects. So these also help us to start up new initiatives. Like, for example, we identified that it was important to start an initiative related to our own operations as a university. So we ended up with a plan that we called Blue Plan. Our colors are blue. So this is the Blue Plan. And the Blue Plan has to do with all aspects related to our operations, and targets related to how we want to be very conscious about the environment. So I think that having this unit that reports to the president has been very helpful. As I mentioned, it's not the owner of the entire initiative, but it helps to coordinate, to create synergies, to give visibility, and to also help us with the partnerships.
Thank you so much, David. And I again rings bells ringing all over. As a smaller university for us, it's easier to coordinate. And actually, we were not organized since our foundation, and we were not organized as departments, but around topics and challenges. So it was easier since the beginning. Easier again because we're small. That said, let me ask you this, because it's a thing for any higher education leader, university president, dean. How do you align incentives, right? I mean, because you've described two things. One is visibility, as you said, the three of you actually mentioned it, and finding out what is it that you're doing, creating the synergies, but also doing new things that are specific, like the new course. I love the idea, Suzanne, of the new course that gives credit to any degree. Because that at least creates opportunity, and then of course then the motivation hopefully would bring students to that. But other initiatives as well. So how have you yourself promoted faculty, staff? Faculty is compensated, is evaluated, is promoted based on different guidelines, right? And in the past they are where they are. But how do we use these mechanisms, or what mechanisms have you used to move people to be, because they may have the internal motivation, but how do we align incentives so that it is in their best interest within the university, within the organization, to be part of this? Because this takes time, right? This goes beyond what they have to do for their courses, for the teaching, for the research we expect from them, et cetera, et cetera. So what have you done? What pieces of advice you may have for others? This is being recorded, so hopefully this can help not only those here, but people who can take a look at this later. Zeynep, let me start with you again.
Thanks. Well, most of it has been, frankly, internally, sort of internal motivation. It wasn't really external, because it's such an important topic, and several faculty members and students do care about this. But then obviously you have to invest in our case, in some, so to speak, departments or research centers. You have to make some investment, both financially, human resource wise, and so forth, to foster that. Because if those so, for example, our university has to be in our mission, we would like to be a center of excellence, so especially for our region. And to do that, you have to have these excellent centers within the university that would actually promote this agenda, or serve as an example, inspire, and so forth. So for us, it's mostly like investing in human resources and these research centers. And once they actually start working, the wheel turns itself, in the sense that they apply for funds, they generate their own funds, and there's so much research funds and interesting initiatives available on the topic. It actually motivates, sort of, it becomes, the external motivation is provided in that regard as well. So I guess it's a matter of, in fact, for me, it is a matter of motivating people to think about these issues and so forth. And I would like to give an example regarding the Global Coalition. Last year, we had this one-week event, event together with that, where we actually increase the visibility of what we're doing in the university. And I was amazed at the variety and the kind of stuff that has been done. And I didn't know some of it. And when I saw like 21 faculty members in one session, all talking about sustainability in the SDG Awareness Week. So I was super impressed because I thought, oh, this person is also interested, and so it's kind of nice to see that spark and interest growing. I guess my suggestion would be to foster that internal motivation and then invest in strategically, because our resources are limited. So you have to make some strategic choices to make that investments. I guess that's sort of for me, that's the internal first, and then external to support that. And then the other sort of this comes naturally, so to speak.
Thank you. Thank you, Zeynep. Suzanne, what piece of advice would you have?
Well, I couldn't agree more with my colleague here, Zeynep. I think it starts with tangible actions. That's where we can really have an impact and an influence, and it is very much in the allocation of resources. If you create new faculty position, that's a tangible action that will signal how important it is. Of course, support for research and teaching. I remember many years ago, probably 5-6 years now, we did something very unusual in our university, which is to allocate significant amount of money for sustainability for research, 10 million. We don't do that normally. Research money comes from outside national competition, and we took money out of our own assets to invest in that. So we thought that was a seed that needed to grow much bigger, and that we had to do that ourselves. We're fortunate on account of our old age to have a lot of great friends, alumni, and you put that as a priority, and they're there. They also will invest in many areas of sustainability. So many come to mind, but certainly food and water security, opening our universities to people who do not have access to high quality education for all sorts of very, very harsh situations. So that's part of sustainability for us. And as I mentioned, when you put it on the agenda of your board of governors, I think it signaled that how important it is. And so people often talk about money speaking loudly. And I don't think it's always true that money is the most important thing, but certainly words alone without any tangible action investments are only that, words. They don't usually have a whole lot of impact. So you've got to combine the two. I think the narrative as well as the investment. Let me mention one small thing. We have a great faculty member who's doing a project on bright spots, which is that we currently have such a negative narrative around the world about how we're going to a disaster situation, a very dystopic kind of narrative, and we've got to find that, because it is not going to help people mobilize. On a negative narrative, it's very hard to mobilize people. And we did the bright spots at our university. What are the bright spots? What are the projects that promote sustainability? And then how can we share that with other universities? And many of those projects are led by students. Like we have the best compost program. It's not us administrators who've done that, it's the students who've done that. So these kinds of activities also, where you start locally and then you can also share with others more broadly. So you can see at home some of the impact, but of course you want to make it even bigger, and then it's by sharing. So these are some of the examples, and some come from us, the administrators, but also a lot from the student leadership.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you. David, what have you and your predecessors, but what advice do you have on creating with all these changes that you, even organizationally, you have described? Sure.
You know, when we think always about this type of challenges, about how to motivate something, then it comes to the minds of many of us, the carrot and the stick. But I think that that's not necessarily the best way to actually motivate something that you want to actually be sustainable and have passionate people working and thinking about this. So it helps definitely, especially when you have the carrots rather than the sticks. It helps. But let me share with you that I guess that one of the important aspects is what Zeynep mentioned about this aspect of internal motivation. So we try to find also what are some of those groups that were already doing something, and then how we can help them to actually even do better what they were doing. So if, for example, we have a volunteering program where staff, people, and faculty from Monterrey decide to work on certain projects. So then we try to define that some of those projects were associated with SDGs, and that was a way in which we can have an impact. Or then we have also some groups of people, students, faculty, staff, concerned about many of the events that we have and those events that are not sustainable. And then we started to work with them in trying to create some guidelines that we can use. And now we have more sustainable events as part of our university. But I think that one important aspect, it has to do with the strategic decision and strategic vision from the leadership. And again, related to what Suzanne mentioned, in our board, my board asked me, my board told me, I know that you have about hundreds of indicators, but we as a board, we want to do a follow-up of just 10 indicators of the entire university and try to synthesize and tell us what are those 10 indicators. I ended up with 15. They concede that, but among those indicators, there is an indicator related to sustainability. Internally, at my level, at the president's office, there are even more indicators associated to sustainability. And now, for example, we have that 60% of our campuses run on clean energy. Our goal is to even increase that. And so indicators similar to this are something that we are trying to promote. But I would say that this aspect of the internal motivation, it ends up being very, very important. And let me finish also taking as an example something that was mentioned in the chat room. Now during the pandemic, there was this aspect of lack of international mobility for our students. So we said, well, how we can have virtual mobility of students, so students working together with the students from other countries and faculty also interacting with faculty from other countries. And then it turned out that SDGs was a great agenda for this international interaction between students and faculty from different universities during the pandemic. And there was this type of courses, collaborative online international learning courses, as a sort of global classroom, where all of a sudden someone said, well, why don't we put this as a general theme and try to identify partners that are interested in this? And they would say, well, yes, that's a very, very interesting idea. And it helped us also with the SDGs initiative. So let's support that initiative. So once again, I think that identifying those champions within the institution in the different areas, research, teaching, operations, and trying to see how we can remove obstacles for those champions is a very key aspect.
Thank you, David. We want to go to questions from the audience, and I'm going to start looking, and I'm going to ask my colleague Gbemi to come online and be part of this. But let me ask you before we go there, a quick question to each. What's the value of getting together in something like UGC, like University Global Coalition? It's a budding initiative. It's new. It's still small for global, scale. But what do you think is the value in coming together globally? The world, from different parts of the world, different types of institutions, definitely different countries. What's the value there, Zeynep?
There are in my opinion, lots of values, but the key value is learning. Even in this session, we're learning from each other. We're looking at the best cases, best examples around the world. It's been a nice learning experience and contribution to that knowledge development. The other advantage is partnerships. When you get to know people, you can actually work with them even closer. Networks are important to us. It's part of our internationalization strategy, and you can't be in all networks, obviously. I mean, you have limited time for that. But when you find the right ones, and when you work actively in a network, then you get a lot out of it. Because it requires time commitment, but if it's for a good cause, if it motivates your students, your faculty, and so forth, it generates more sort of value than actually it consumes from you, so to speak. So to that extent, international collaboration is a must in this world in order to address any challenge. Simply for the fact that this is important, you have to be in those networks to address these challenges if you want to be a key player in that regard. So it's strategic, internationalization, and so forth. Also, it has lots of advantages such as learning and cooperation, new research initiatives, new teaching initiatives, and so forth.
Thank you, Zeynep. Suzanne, how do you see it?
Yeah, very much along the same line here. I think we said already that SDGs are daunting goals, very, very difficult. And it's easy for each one of us as individual and even as institution to think that our own contribution is simply a drop in the bucket. So I believe in the additive powers of many, many drops. And I think the more of us who join in initiatives like this one, the more we can have an impact. And then, of course, learning and sharing in particular. I mean, whenever you are participating in these meetings, you learn of what other people are doing, and none of us would be opposed to others copying what we do. We copy what others do because they have had the experience, they did it, they can share where they had some success and where they saw some difficulties. And so we can all then implement new initiatives within our own institutions. So I think it has to be done as a net. There's no way we can achieve the goals of the SDGs as individual nations or institutions. We've got to be building that very strong network. And there's something about, I think, the power of more and more people joining in, where even those who are reluctant and think maybe it's utopic and maybe it's never going to be done, and they have a negative perspective, maybe eventually we'll be able to win more and more of people like that. And they do so for good reasons. I don't want to criticize people who have those feelings, but eventually, you know, we've got to get on together as a planet on these topics. It is part of our survival. And I think the more we work together, the better we have a chance to deal with these very important challenges facing our planet.
Thank you, Suzanne. David?
Yes, let me tell you that for us, there are three words that are part of the mission of UGC that to me resonate a lot about the value and why it's important a network like this. One, it has to do with collaborative, the collaboration that is definitely needed and that my colleagues have emphasized on that. The second word that I like it has to do with global. So this is something that is definitely a global issue, but it's one of those things that it applies, think global, then execute local, act local. So it really helped us a lot to have these peers where peer institutions where we can interact, we can get to know what they are doing, and we can get to know what we can apply in our own context. And the third word that I would like also to mention, it's partnership. Partnership with different stakeholders, not just with the universities. Of course, we're a network of universities, but what we have found is that also as part of UGC, it's a way to connect with other stakeholders and NGOs from the UN, and even I think that there is an opportunity for connection with private sector. So it's those three words of collaboration, global partnership, I think that give an important value for us. I would say that we are, as perhaps many of you, we are part of different networks of universities. But what I have found is, yes, in many of those networks, the topic is there, but it's one of the topics among many other topics. And also the other, and here in this network, it is the topic, the SDGs. And the other aspect that I would like to also mention as a difference that I have found is that many of the efforts in many places are focused on the environmental aspects of the SDGs, which is really, really important, and which we all definitely agree, and we are also doing many things in that arena. But what I like it is that here is about the SDGs, and there are 17 SDGs, and some of them have to do with hunger, some of them have to do with poverty, some of them have to do with employment, some of them have to do with education. So I think that it's very interesting to have a network like UGC, where this is the focus, and this is, there are peers where you can learn. And I will finalize mentioning there is also an opportunity to amplify our voices and our leadership. Perhaps related to your previous question, something that has also helped us to motivate our community are some commitments, some public commitments that we have done with different organizations, like signing as part of Race to Zero, and committing to reduction of greenhouse gases through year 2040, and those sort of things. So I think that having this group give us the confidence that yes, we should be doing this, and there are mechanisms in which we can achieve and move forward and have more impact.
Thank you so much. We definitely want to touch on some of the questions that are now being asked. Let me pass it to my colleague Gbemi Disu. As I mentioned, Carnegie Mellon in Africa, she leads the operation there, and it's wonderful to have you here.
Great, thank you, Arturo, and thank you to our panelists for all the great discussions so far. I'm going to offer this question to all three of you, or all four of you, including Arturo, to share your thoughts. Currently, we're sort of in a crisis ADD situation where there's constantly different things, from the pandemic to the war in Ukraine. And so I'm combining a couple questions here, but how do you as an institutional leader prioritize what to focus on, and how do you move forward with programs and initiatives as the world continues to constantly change? I'll start with Suzanne.
Okay, well, I think that is the big issue. We can't prioritize. I mean, you can't say, okay, so now we're in a pandemic, let's forget about the fact that education is not accessible to many people in the world. Let's forget about the climate change. Okay, during the pandemic, the sky was bluer, but as we know, that didn't decrease the number of cars fueled by petrol that we have in our country, and so on. So you can't prioritize, and that's the tough thing. I think we know often people tell us, what's your top 3 priorities? And the issue with the SDG, when you look at them, is that not doing one will have impact on the others. Not providing, for example, women with the same opportunities will have an impact. Health if you're not healthy, frankly, I don't know how you pursue the other goals. So it is the big issue, is you can't prioritize, and it's tough. That's why it's tough, I think, is that now in our institutions, what we do, I'm not sure it would work at the world level, but in our institution, we have champions. So you'll have a person who's a real champion for global and population health, and that's really great. And that person worries about agriculture, food security, water security, women's health, children's health, all of that. But their focus as a champion is the health sector. Another will be in the engineering, for example, or science engineering areas, and that's their focus. But they think about the other ones as they focus on their one big priority. I think that's the way, is to find champions for all of those, but champions who do think about the impact of their priority on others. So, not simple. I have a good colleague who once said, and I've always remembered that, for every complex problem, there is a simple solution that is wrong. And so complex problems require complex solutions, and it is hard.
Thank you, Suzanne. The interconnectivity of all the goals certainly make it a challenge for higher ed leaders to address those. What about David? How are you handling these at your institution?
Yeah, you know, I agree with what Suzanne just mentioned, and I talk about this report that we have every year, and in that report we identify that perhaps the SDGs where we are contributing the most in terms of number of projects that we have, and then we found out that, for example, education and health are among the top two of the SDGs associated with where we have more activity. Now, but once again, this was just a compilation. It was not just, it was not an aspect related to giving a priority of saying, well, these are the ones that we should be emphasizing. We are having those discussions. I mean, I think that the question has two dimensions. One is how we prioritize SDGs among many other things that we have, and the other, within the 17 goals that we have, do we decide on some priorities? I'm talking about the second aspect. Related to that, what we have thought is, let's try now to see how we can link each SDG has a very concrete indicators, targets, and so on. So what we're saying is, from what we have and from what are the targets and the indicators of the SDGs, what are the ones where we think that we have the more opportunity to have a more direct impact from what we currently are having? So we are having that reflection to try to decide if there are some of those 17 SDGs that we can even do something, put more resources, put more energy or more structure in terms of what we want to achieve. That doesn't mean that we want to raise what we are doing on the other ones, because I think that it's great that there is this activity, and that in all 17 SDGs, you can find classify all these 800 activities and projects that we have. But there is a reality related to the aspect or the type of impact that the different 800 projects have associated to one of those targets. So that's related to that. And very briefly related to the other aspect, I think that this is one of those aspects that is very, I would say, transversal to the university. It's not something that you say this is more important than this other thing. I mean, this is one thing that is one of those basic things that it's important to do for us in universities at this time, in this moment that we are. As I mentioned, our strategic plan was defined in year one of pandemic. And of course, we have some people in the team that say, why are we doing this? I mean, we need to think about surviving this thing and not about planning what we want to do towards the next 5 years, given the context that we have. But we decided to do it, and this ended up to be one of the 15 projects that we have associated to that.
Great, thank you. Zeynep, how do you handle it in Turkey?
Well, we're used to this issue. So it's always a crisis, and it's sort of natural in the sense that, I mean, if you focus on the crisis, you won't be able to do anything. As my colleagues said, you have to work. You have your strategic plan, whatever. You have your mission, you have your vision, you have your budget, and all these things should not be affected by the crisis, although it can be. But then you have to find solutions, at least short-term solutions, to get around with them, right? So it's I totally agree with my colleagues in the sense that there will be people in the university with passionate about the topic that they are interested in, and they'll continue to do so. So to that extent, as an administration, you have to make sure you are going and you're pursuing your core mission, research, teaching, service, and so forth, regardless of the crisis. But at the same time, obviously, people will come up with ideas how to handle that crisis, how to solve that immediate issue. And we will be facing more of these. And I'm not expecting any slowdown. And we're just getting used to, for example, COVID is still here. I mean, we're pretending as if there is no COVID, but in fact, people are getting infected and so forth. It's just that we're used. So there will be crisis in the future, especially in our parts of the world.
Thank you, Arturo.
Thank you, Gbemi. First of all, this shows another great value from UGC. I mean, we conceive this as a top leadership group with the goal that, if you bring in the vice chancellor, the principal, the president, you will move the institution. That was the thinking, right? And we'll support, just as the three of you have shared, we'll support our champions, right? We'll support those who are already and have been working for years and years on these issues. And so listening to my colleagues go through the same thing and sharing the same position, because I think short-term, long-term, same answer. I wouldn't add to that other than, to just go through what you're going while you keep your eye on the future. And if universities cannot do that, who else will in society, right? Government is obviously focused on the short term. Businesses depend on, so it's one of our key roles in society, I would argue. On the prioritization in general, I will use that quote, Suzanne, widely from now on, because I share that thinking. However, what we can prioritize is on what we can do, right? And so, for instance, with SDGs, we mapped what we were doing, and we're small, but we're focused on food systems. So clearly, SDG 2 is key. But as Suzanne said, gender, key to zero hunger, health, key to zero. Everything in the end connects. And so what we've tried, and we are going through a planning process, David, really your words actually motivate me, because part of the thinking is we're not out of this yet. And we're still struggling with a few things, but we're still thinking for the next 5 to 20 years. And so what we've prioritized is where are our main resources, and I think it has to do with our, where's the mass of our knowledge, the mass of our the things we do best. But one of the conclusions that we also reach, honestly, in this planning process and thinking about the future is what we've all said. We can't do it alone. And so actually I have more meetings next week. So I take this motivation very seriously, because part of looking at what we're putting there, it seems impossible. The key is we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it alone, right? And so we are putting on our strategic plan for the future really our work, but our role in these bigger coalitions, in these bigger networks and organizations as a key strategic lever. So not what we can do alone. We're small. Universities like Tech, McGill are much bigger, and none of us is enough. right? So we're putting as a strategic path, if you will, the role we can play in that with many, many others. And so I think that that's the prioritization we can do internally, but in the end, it needs to target the whole thing, or we won't solve it. That's our take.
Thank you. In this audience, we have a mix of administrators, other hired leaders, as well as students. So I want to kind of pivot and talk a bit about students. They're hopefully the future, and really they seem more sort of passionate and driven to make change, since a lot of what's happening in the world affects them. What is one thing at your institutions that you're doing to really get beyond just the champions to a broader student base? And second question aligned with that is, what should students in this audience do to be more engaged in supporting this? So what is one thing you're doing, and what should students in the audience do? I will start with, I'll go with Zeynep this time, give Suzanne a minute.
Thank you. I mean, when you say one thing, I was like stressed out, which one should I pick? But I guess students, the course example that Suzanne gave, actually, we do have a core program. And in the core program, we now have more sustainability courses, because core program is taken by all the students to graduate from the university. So I guess the easiest thing a university administrator can think is having a course. Obviously, that's sort of the basic level. But then I guess what we're doing is giving them opportunity, I guess, to develop as a change maker, as a leader, through more applied, so to speak, not only theoretical, but more applied projects, and being more entrepreneurial, so social entrepreneurship, for example. So I guess I would point that out as one thing. And what was this other part of the question?
What should the students do, or people in the audience? What is one thing they can do to advance the SDGs?
Oh, I guess pursuing their passion. I guess, and if we can inspire them to pursue their passion, that will be a great thing, because young people are sometimes sort of, obviously they're concerned about how they would make a living, for example, how would they, what should they prioritize, sort of earning more money or solving problems, and so I guess if you are passionate about SDGs, go ahead and focus on that. You'll find the resources. You'll find, as long as you're passionate about it, and ask people for help in this, and collaborate. Be part of the networks, and you shouldn't, in my opinion, get sort of discouraged by negativity, but because this part of the entrepreneurial spirit, and entrepreneurs are also like, there will be some negativity and failure before success. So I would just sort of advocate that. My daughter is now helping with, started her career, so to speak, to advance female participation in politics, for example. And she's a graduate of our university. That's why I picked her like as an example. But now she's pursuing her passion as a career. Not within a traditional company, obviously, but within a more a non-traditional association. So I guess I have many other students who have pursued that career as well. So I guess that would be my simple advice.
Great, thank you. David?
Yes, there is this Chinese proverb that tell me and I forget, show me and I remember, but involve me and I will learn. So I think that related to what Zeynep is mentioning, something that we have found is that you try to identify projects that the students can get involved and can do and can get their hands dirty, let's say, and that are in the umbrella of the SDGs. That is something that is very practical, relatively easy to implement, compared to, for example, curriculum change with all the process that it has to go through meetings, senates, and so on. So that the other thing, the curriculum aspect is very important, as it was mentioned. It has to be there. But talking about some, let's say, low effort, high impact, try to identify those activities or those type of projects. The other thing that also very similar is student groups. We did a mapping of the different student groups that we had to try to identify if we had some student groups. We found out that about between 20 and 30% of the student groups somehow are associated with SDGs. So then try to get to know what they are doing, and try to, those that are doing something more close to what the SDG, the agenda is, then once again, how we can support them. And like, for example, we gave them some visibility to some of those groups in the internal report that we did related to the different initiatives. And they feel very proud that their work is being showcased in this report for the entire university. So students are very passionate. So, and they will surprise us about what they are already doing and what they can do. And I would say that they are also pushing us to move faster, because they also do the finger pointing to us that you are the one that your generation is the one that is letting me this big challenge.
Thank you, David. Suzanne?
So my colleague gave very good examples of initiatives that students do in their own university. So I won't repeat that. We do the same type of things, but I'll start with one thought here, which is fundamentally the SDGs are about understanding our common humanity and promoting our common humanity. That's what it's about. And it's about promoting our common humanity, not only at the local level in our own community, city, country, but globally. And I think having new generations understanding that is hugely important. And it starts with me with a very strong commitment to fundamental principles: respect for each human being, equity, diversity, a sense of responsibility as a human being on this planet. And of course, also the freedom. I mean, les Français disaient liberté, égalité, fraternité. When they said that, it was at the level of the country. This has to be promoted globally. Freedom, when you think of some of the conflicts that we're seeing now, is an incredibly important principle as well. So to me, if all of us human beings have a good sense of those principles and what it means for us, then I think we're on the right path for achieving the SDG. But it starts there, and it has to be with not only an understanding, but a strong commitment to those principles.
Great. Thanks, Arturo. Do you want to add anything?
Well, very hard to follow that, to be honest. Maybe the one thing I will say, because it can be useful to someone, is that we, as our program is structured to give our students hands-on experience on many fronts, the technical, but also the community work. So we focus on grassroots work. What we think we need is a connection to the global. So to your point, Suzanne, so especially because they're focused and so good at grassroots work, they also need to understand that this is connected to global forces and global events and global processes. And so that's one of the virtues we see in SDGs, because they connect us, right? And different from the MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals, this is for every country in the world, for every region in the world, this humanity. And I think that's one of the advantages. And my advice to students is to get together, to follow their passion, but also together. And I loved, I think it's Radna, I forget his or her name, but somebody mentioned in the chat, we want students getting involved. We want that. There are millions and millions of university students around the world. They can be the millions that Suzanne was talking about, right? I mean, imagine a movement now at a global scale. And honestly, it's not impossible at all. At all. It's never been more possible than today. So that would be my word to them. And our role here, as David said it internally for tech, is to remove obstacles, is to make it possible, is to clean the way. And I think we all here are committed to that.
Great, thank you. And just to respect time, I'll just ask one last question and we'll do a quick, in the spirit of UGC, which amplifies other universities and the work we're doing collectively, besides obviously your fabulous universities, what are some other universities doing great work in this space that you encourage people to go learn about? I'll start with David.
I was going to mention McGill, but I will also mention another one that is not represented here, perhaps. I think that UBC is also doing a very interesting work related to this aspect. Yeah.
Great. Zeynep, it could be any part of the world.
Well, one of the networks that we are in is the SAMS network. And all the schools in the CEMS in that network, it's a graduate program in international management, actually actively involves in sustainability and as a program too. So that's what I thought, like there are a network of schools or universities. So that I would also highlight that. It's all global as well, started in Europe, but now it's more global. And there are 30 universities in that network, for example.
Suzanne?
Well, I think, you know, there are many universities around the world who are doing really great work in this area. Too many to name. And what is interesting is they bring their own context, their own perspective. Some that we've worked more closely with, and I know what they're doing. Well, of course, Georgia Tech, fantastic leadership at Georgia Tech. And your own university, very, very good. We've worked with Cape Town, really great. Wonderful leadership there to work with. Geneva, Edinburgh, these are ones, and Monterrey, these are universities that we've worked with more closely, but it's happening everywhere. I know the great initiative at CUNY, you know, everywhere. And so it is good to, I think, share these experiences, because there are things that might not be an issue in your own country, but is a big issue related to SDG in another country, and it opens your mind, it hopefully opens your heart. Because as we've said, it can't just be locally, it has to be globally. And so you have to have both an open mind and an open heart to tackle those projects. So good to connect with people from other places.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. And Arturo, you can't mention anyone in the UGC network. So who else?
No. I will. There was a question in the chat, I think, that this also touches on, because there, as my colleagues have said, I can think of dozens, and that's to me inspirational. We're not alone. There are many universities. Big, small, rich countries, not rich countries, north, south, more technical, more scientific, more liberal arts, working hard on this. I do want to highlight a group of universities within UGC that are working on SDG 2, and we're part of that. McGill is part of that. UC Davis is part of that. Newcastle is part of that. University of Sao Paulo is part of that now, and more will join. But what I like to highlight about these 5, which of course are interesting to look at to begin with, is that we're starting to work together to see what else can we do. From the typical things we can think of. We are academics and we're universities, so we can think of joint courses and things. But I'm sure that if we keep working and if we put our minds and hearts to it, we will come up with other things as well as conveners. David mentioned that before, right? We are conveners too. So it's not only other universities. We will convene other actors in society. And so I will plug this in, because I think it's valuable to look at, not only the university individually, but the group. And so Sorry for not following orders.
No, it's okay. I assumed you'll talk about that project. Well, over to you with the next 4 minutes, Arturo, maybe to wrap up the conversation. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Gbemi, and it's great to have you here. And thanks, because in the end, I mean, the two of us organized this panel, and we thought it was an important conversation to have and to share. So let me maybe just go around, and I'll include you in this ask, Gbemi. In 1 minute, what is an advice you would give to anyone on the chat? I mean, it's Thursday. Next Monday, what could be an interesting change for someone in this group, or to someone they talk to, or to someone who will watch this recording in the future? I'm sorry. Let's start with David.
I would say just to try to identify your key champions that you have in your institutions.
Thank you. Suzanne?
Yeah, I think that is a good thing. And it is good to combine the optimism, the hope, with the practical. And if you can do that, I think you have a good chance of having an impact. So mix the two. I find often and that in some of our university, well, in my university, sometimes we have many people who do move the needle, but they're focusing on the hope side and forget about the pragmatism side. And you need both. You need both. So if we can combine the two, I think we will move forward.
Thank you. Gbemi?
I think it's following up a bit on what Suzanne said, is celebrate those milestones. So success begets success. So once you, even those who are finding it difficult to get everyone on board, once you start to showcase and highlight how, even though you're a soul, you feel alone in this vast space, more people will join. And so just continue to advocate by celebrating the successes of those who've bought into it, in the hopes that eventually those who haven't will step up and join that as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Zeynep.
Well, it's hard to follow, right, with all these great advice, but I would say find a new collaborator. Just on Monday, find someone who would share your dreams, or who would tell you to dream something else. We need to, it's very difficult times, and we sometimes lose hope. But it's, as we all mentioned, it's there's so many great things that are happening, and celebrating those great things and being hopeful with new partners, new collaborators would be nice.
Wonderful. So we have 1 minute, and I want to point a practical on the survey that has been posted on the chat. Please take a look and please click. It's important that we can keep learning and keep improving and organizing these conversations. Clearly, the enthusiasm we see makes it clear that it's valuable, but we want to make it better, and we want to make it larger, so that we can include more people. Thank you so much, so much, David, Suzanne, and Zeynep, for joining us. We're busy, and yet this is so important. Thank you so much. Thank you, Gbemi, for being once more a partner in crime in these things. Let me say just quickly 3 things as we end. 1, awareness clearly is key. SDG Awareness Week was posted there in the chat. It's in March next year. Stay tuned, because that thing is a good initiative as part of UGC. 2, I really think it's important to keep in mind the big picture, what Suzanne mentioned. There are no simple solutions, but we're not alone. So I would strongly, I personally take that from this. And 3rd, I have to confess, I live inspired, because we can do a lot when we remember that internal motivation can go a lot. So it's not only carrot sticks, as David said. People want to do this. Our students want to do this. Our faculty want to do this. Let's get together to do it globally. And I think we have a good shot. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for this session, and thank you so much for this week. Join us for other events that UGC has today, later, and tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Merci.